For joining today. The name of our presentation is Hey, Do You Have a Minute? And we're going to talk about what small businesses need to know about the differences between the Family and Medical Leave Act and the Connecticut Paid Leave Act. Just a quick introduction. My name is Jessica Vargas. I am the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer here at the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority. And I'm a lifelong Connecticut resident. I have been in media and marketing and communications for the past 15 years. I earned my bachelor's degrees in Spanish and in advertising from Southern Methodist University in Dallas. So that was my short 4-year hiatus away from Connecticut, and then I came right back. So today we're going to talk about the Connecticut Paid Leave Program. We'll talk about FMLA and Connecticut Paid Leave, and how you will go about implementing both of those acts. They are two different laws, but it's hard to talk about one without the other. So we'll review an overview of each, as well as some changes that are going to be coming into effect specifically with FMLA that may impact your business. And we'll give you some additional resources where you can go to get even more information. And again, we will leave time for Q&A. So first, let me tell you a bit about the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority. The authority is the entity that oversees the Connecticut Paid Leave Program. We are a quasi-public agency, and we have 5 main areas of focus. The first is outreach and engagement. So we're responsible for making sure that employers, employees, healthcare providers, pretty much anyone who is going to be impacted by Connecticut Paid Leave understands their responsibilities. We develop the policies and procedures needed to run the program. We establish the trust fund contribution rate and receive contributions. We approve and audit private plans for folks that would like to opt out of the state program. There are specific requirements for a private plan, and so we review those and make sure that they are compliant. And we also administer claims for paid leave benefits, which will begin in January, and we will do that in conjunction with our third-party administrator, which is AFLAC. Looking back over the past year or so, here's a timeline showing you some of the key dates. So about a year ago, towards the end of November of last year, of 2020, employer registration opened. So that's when businesses began registering with the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority. On January 1st of this year, employers were to begin deducting worker contributions. The program is entirely employee funded. So employees contribute 0.5% of their wages, which businesses deduct from their paychecks and remit quarterly to us. In February, private plan applications opened, and so we began receiving and reviewing applications for folks who wanted to have their own private plan. Quarterly payments are due to the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority. There is a 30-day grace period, so 30 days after the end of the first quarter would be April 30th. That's when first quarter payments were due. July 31st, October 31st, and January 31st, 2022. In just a few short weeks in December, we will begin accepting applications for paid leave benefits for qualifying events that are happening on or after January 1st, 2022. And then on or after January 1st, we'll begin to actually pay out those benefits for approved claims. So let's talk a bit about who is covered. Most employers in the state of Connecticut who have more than one person working for them, one or more people working for them, are covered. And that does include nonprofits and private sector employers with a unionized workforce. Now, sole employers or self-employed individuals may choose to opt into the program if they would like to. They're not required to, but they can opt in. And the one caveat to keep in mind is that they must remain in the program for a minimum of 3 years if they choose to opt in. Now, there are some exceptions as to who would not be covered, and those include employees of the federal government, unionized employees of the state of Connecticut, except as to covered public employees. The same goes for municipalities and local or regional boards of education, unless they have covered public employees. And non-public elementary or secondary school employees are also not covered. Then there are a few more exceptions that are exempt as a result of other laws. So that includes railroad workers, individuals who are employed by the government of another state. So if someone is a Connecticut resident, but they work for the state government of Rhode Island, for example, they would not be eligible to participate in the paid leave plan. Employees of sovereign nations are exempt, which does include employees of Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun. employees engaged in interstate commerce who work in Connecticut but live in another state and thus don't pay income tax in Connecticut. So that would be truck drivers. And lastly, spouses of active duty military who have opted to continue to pay taxes in their home state instead of the state in which their spouse is currently deployed would also be exempt. Now, I mentioned some covered public employees, and let's talk about what that means. So non-unionized employees of the state of Connecticut are covered by the program. Unionized employees of the state of Connecticut who collectively bargain to be included would then be covered. And employees of municipalities and local or regional boards of ed, both union and non-union, would be covered if the unionized employees collectively bargain to be included. Then both the unionized and non-unionized employees would be covered. So in terms of sole proprietors and independent contractors, as I mentioned, sole proprietors and independent contractors may choose to enroll in this program if they would like to, but they are not required to. If they do choose to enroll, they have to stay in the program for at least 3 years, and their contributions would be the same as any other covered employee, so half of 1% of their self-employment earnings. Now, if someone is a sole proprietor, but they also have employees, even if they choose not to opt into the program for themselves, they must register with the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority and remit contributions for their employees, even if they're not participating. On the other hand, if a sole proprietor or independent contractor receives a W-2, then they are considered to be an employee of the business and they must participate in the program. And that's true even if that person is the owner or an officer of the company. As I mentioned, the program is entirely employee funded. So here's sort of the life cycle of how that process works. The employees contribute half of 1% of their earnings, and contributions are post-tax and they're based on the wages as calculated for FICA. Now, the contributions are capped at the Social Security contribution limit, which is currently just shy of $143,000. So that would make the maximum annual contribution rate $714 per year. So even if an employee makes over $142,800 per year, their contributions would be capped at that $714. The deductions are taken from employee paychecks through payroll deduction, and the employer remits them to us quarterly. We at the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority receive those contributions and validate them against information that we receive from other state agencies. And the contributions are deposited into the Paid Leave Trust. The Paid Leave Trust is the fund from which we'll be paying benefits beginning in January. So let's review FMLA, the Family and Medical Leave Act, and talk more about Connecticut paid leave and how the two work together and how they're different. You may have heard of FMLA. FMLA is an acronym that stands for the Family and Medical Leave Act, and there's both a federal law and a Connecticut law. Now, both laws provide job protected time away from work for certain qualifying family and health reasons. However, both laws also state that the leave is unpaid. So some people might say, well, haven't we had paid leave in Connecticut for a long time? And the answer is no. We have had FMLA in Connecticut since the 1990s, but that has always been unpaid. Again, it only provides job protection. Some employers do provide paid leave to their employees. So for example, they might provide paid maternity leave, but that's not a requirement. And some employers also will require or permit their employees to use their earned accrual, so their PTO, sick time, vacation time while they're out on leave. There are some pretty significant changes coming to Connecticut FMLA in 2022 that we're going to talk about. So one big change is that there will be no hours worked eligibility requirement come 2022. Right now, under Connecticut FMLA, an employee has to work for at least 1,000 hours to be eligible for job protection. Another big change is that job protection will kick in after 3 months instead of 12 months of employment. There are also some expanded reasons for leave, including family violence leave. And there's an expanded definition of family, which we'll talk about. And again, there will now be the addition of the Paid Leave Act, which can provide for income replacement benefits if someone is taking job protected leave for a qualifying reason. Now, this chart shows you how FMLA works currently in Connecticut versus how it will work come 2022. So right now, Connecticut FMLA only applies to companies with 75 or more employees. Starting in January, it will apply to companies with 1 or more employees. Additionally, as I mentioned, job protection currently does not kick in until after 12 months of employment. So an employee must have been working for their employer for at least 12 months. They can be non-consecutive, and at least 1,000 hours during the 12 months immediately before their leave. Starting in January, there will be no hours worked requirement, and that protection will kick in after 3 months. The length of leave, availability of leave will also be changing. So right now, there's up to 16 weeks of leave available in a 24-month period for most reasons, and 26 weeks of leave in a 12-month period for military caregiver leave. Starting next year, there will be up to 12 weeks of leave available in a 12-month period for all leave reasons. The 26 weeks for military caregiver leave will remain unchanged, and there may be an additional 2 weeks of leave available for incapacitation during pregnancy. And then the last change that's important to note is that right now, an employer can require their employee to use all of their accrued PTO for their leave. So if someone has 4 weeks of accrued PTO and their doctor says they need to be out for 4 weeks to take care of a serious health condition, they can be required to use all of that time. Starting next year, the employer can still require the employee to use accrued PTO, but they must allow them to keep up to 2 weeks. So in the scenario that I just gave, the employer could require their employee to use 2 weeks of their PTO for the 4 weeks that they need to be out, but they would have to allow them to keep the additional 2 weeks for future use. Now let's talk a little bit more about Connecticut paid leave. We use the acronym CTPL, and we use that to refer to the act itself, the program, and the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority. That's us here at the agency that administers this program. The Paid Leave Act is a law that creates a source of income replacement benefits for employees who have to take time away from work for certain family and medical reasons. It does not provide job protected leave. FMLA provides the job protection, and Connecticut Paid Leave provides the income replacement. And you may also hear it referred to as PFML, or Paid Family and Medical Leave. There are several different reasons that an employee could apply for job protected leave or income replacement. The first is called medical leave, and that is to receive treatment for or recover from someone's own serious health condition. Pregnancy is considered a serious health condition, as is serving as an organ or bone marrow donor. The next is called caregiver leave, and that's leave that a worker might take to care for a family member who's experiencing a serious health condition. Then we have bonding leave, and bonding leave is time that a worker can take to bond with a newborn or a newly placed child who is adopted or placed in foster care. And in the case of adoption and foster care, that bonding leave can also be used to attend pre-placement activities. There's military caregiver leave, which is leave taken when an employee is caring for a family member injured in active duty in the military. And there's another kind of leave that applies to the military called qualifying exigency leave, and that is to attend to specific issues associated with a parent, spouse, or child's called to overseas active duty. So for example, if the military member was the one who was providing the primary child's care for a couple's child, and now they've been called to duty, that could possibly be qualifying exigency leave to make additional arrangements for childcare once that military member is deployed. And then lastly, and this is unique to Connecticut, is family violence leave. And that is leave that can be taken to attend to specific issues resulting from family violence, which could include relocation, attending court proceedings, or seeking medical or psychological care resulting from the family violence. There's a special note that I wanted to make regarding caregiver leave. So under the Connecticut laws, an employee can take caregiver leave and receive paid leave benefits for the following relationships: a parent, a spouse, a son or daughter of any age, a sibling, a grandparent, a grandchild, or an individual related to the employee by blood or affinity, whose close association the employee shows to be the equivalent of one of those family relationships. What does that mean, related by affinity? That basically means that if a person can prove that their relationship with someone to whom they don't have any blood or legal relationship mimics that of one of the relationships that we outlined. So as between spouses or parent and child, if they can prove that that relationship exists, they can take leave to care for a person with whom they have that relation. So the determination of related by affinity, of course, is situation specific, and it's governed by the circumstances of the individuals involved. But here are some examples when this might come into play. For example, if you have an aunt or an uncle who relies on the employee for unpaid care, and the relationship between the employee and the aunt or uncle is like that of a child and a parent, that could be considered a relationship by affinity. A more common example might be an unmarried couple who lives together, shares a home, maybe they have children together, but they're not married, so legally they're not related. That's another situation where the relationship by affinity would come in for caregiver leave. This chart shows the eligibility requirements of not only Connecticut FMLA and Connecticut paid leave, which we've been discussing, but also federal FMLA. So keep in mind that there is a federal FMLA law as well. So let's take a look at these differences. Federal FMLA, again, provides job protected leave, and this only applies to businesses with 50 or more employees. In order to be eligible, a worker must have been employed by the employer for at least 12 months and worked at least 1,250 hours in the 12 months immediately preceding the leave. Under Connecticut FMLA, and keep in mind this will be as of when the law changes in January, the employee must have been employed by the employer for at least 3 months, but there will be no hours worked requirement. Now, in order to be eligible for Connecticut paid leave benefits as of January 2022, the employee must have earned at least $2,325 in the highest earning quarter of the first 4 of the 5 most recent quarters. And that can be from 1 or more employers. So if you have a part-time worker who works 2 or 3 jobs, as long as their combined earnings from those employers adds up to the $2,325 or more, they would be eligible in terms of the earnings requirement. And then the other requirement is that the employee must either be currently employed and working in Connecticut with a covered employer, or had been employed and working in Connecticut with a covered employer during the past 12 weeks immediately before their leave. And then lastly, a sole proprietor or self-employed individual must have opted in to participate in this program, and they must be a resident of Connecticut as well. Now let's look at the entitlements. So the length of either job protected leave or the amount of benefits available for someone who is eligible for these types of protections. Under federal FMLA, for job protection, the employee could receive up to 12 weeks in a 12-month period for all leave reasons, with the exception of military caregiver leave, where there are up to 26 weeks available in a 12-month period. With Connecticut FMLA, starting in January, there will be up to 12 weeks within a 12-month period available for all reasons except military caregiver is the same as the federal FMLA, so 26 weeks in a 12-month period. And then additionally, unique to Connecticut is that 12 days in a calendar year can be used for family violence leave pursuant to the Family Violence Leave Act. Additionally, an employee may be eligible for 2 additional weeks of leave for incapacitation during pregnancy. That's the job protection piece. Then when we look at the income replacement under Connecticut paid leave starting in January, up to 12 weeks in a 12-month period are available for all reasons, including military caregiver leave. So someone could be eligible for up to 26 weeks of job protection for military caregiver leave, but they would still only be able to receive 12 weeks of income replacement benefits under Connecticut paid leave. Up to 12 days of the 12 weeks can be used for income replacement for family violence leave, and that additional 2 weeks may be available for incapacitation during pregnancy as well. So now we'd like to talk a bit about implementing the Connecticut Paid Leave Act, and I'm going to ask my colleague, Kathy Mihalik, if she can come on camera, and she's going to take over this part of the presentation. Kathy, if you need me to advance the slide, just let me know.
All right, thank you very much, Jessica. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Mihalik, and I'm the Benefits Process Lead here at Connecticut Paid Leave Authority. And we'll be going over some of the responsibilities for claims, contributions, and hopefully answer all the questions that you have regarding the Connecticut paid leave experience. As you are aware, effective as of 1/1/2021, workers were contributing 0.5% of their FICA wages up to the Social Security contribution limit. As an employer, you were required to register a Connecticut paid leave account, deduct the 0.5% from the employee's wages, and remit the contributions to Connecticut paid leave without any required backup information. The Connecticut Paid Leave Authority received these contributions and processed the payments as they came in. Next slide, Jessica, please. Paid leave claims. Effective December 1st, employees in the state of Connecticut will be able to submit their claims for a 1/1/2022 effective date. What that means is that workers can submit their claims in December, but payments will not be issued until January of 2022. Workers are required to submit their applications in a timely manner. How they do this is that they go to the Connecticut Paid Leave website, they create a personal account, and that account will direct them to the AFLAC portal. AFLAC is our TPA for handling claims and processing the claims administration. Employees ideally would notify employers that they are going out on Connecticut paid leave, either prior to or during or after they have submitted a claim. As part of the process, employers will be receiving from the employee an employment verification form. On this form, it asks information such as employer name, contact information, address, and particular attention should be paid to the employer email contact information. If we have any questions regarding the employer portion of the form, which includes information about the worker's PTO time, wages, or salary, we can then quickly be in contact with the employer and resolve any questions that we may have. With AFLAC, AFLAC will be determining eligibility, reviewing the claims, calculating the benefits, monitoring the claims on an ongoing basis, investing any possible fraud, and imposing penalties when appropriate. The Connecticut Department of Labor will be hearing appeals for denials of any claims. Next slide, Jessica, please. As part of the process, the worker submits the claim. We ask that workers submit claims 30 days prior to when they go out on leave. They would go to the ConnecticutPaidLeave.org site, and as I mentioned, they would create a personal account. And then once their account is set up, there is a Submit a Claim button where they would be redirected to the AFLAC portal. They would submit their application process, the checklist, supporting documentation they may have, and at that point, complete any other questions on the portal that it asks. AFLAC then takes this information and determines the eligibility. We have information such as the Department of Labor data and other documentation to verify earnings for the worker. If a worker is not eligible, AFLAC does notify the worker and offers what is called a right to request reconsideration. I'm sorry, Jess, I can't see part of the, there we go. When AFLAC determines if a claim is approved, they will review the supporting documentation, including the employment verification. If there is any documentation missing, AFLAC will also reach out to the worker. Again, if the claim is denied, AFLAC will notify the worker and offer what is called a right to request reconsideration. AFLAC calculates the benefits. What they do is they will use DOL data and other sources of info as necessary to calculate the weekly benefit earnings. AFLAC also issues the benefit payments. Benefits are issued every Tuesday and are paid 2 weeks in arrears. For example, a benefit for the week of January 2nd, 2022 through January 8th, 2022 will be issued on 1/18/22. The worker is responsible for notifying AFLAC of any changes, including the start or end date of the leave and receipt of other income. If the worker is taking intermittent leave, the worker must also provide AFLAC with frequent updates about leave usage. Here's an example using formulas for paid leave benefits. If a worker's base weekly earnings are less than or equal to the minimum wage multiplied by 40. So as of 8/1/2021, the minimum wage is $13 an hour. For example purposes, we took 40 hours times 13, which equals $520. If a worker's base earnings are more than the minimum wage, the weekly benefit rate will be 95% of 40 times the minimum wage. Now, I know this is going to sound a little bit complicated, but we do have another example on the following slide that'll clarify things. So the weekly benefit rate will be 95% of 40 times the minimum wage plus 60% of the difference between the amount of the worker's base weekly earnings and the Connecticut minimum wage multiplied by 40. The total weekly benefit payment is capped at 60 times the Connecticut minimum wage. And in this example, 60 times 13, which equals 780. So here's a little clearer example of a worker A and worker B example. Worker A works 40 hours at $13 an hour, which is the minimum wage. So we take 40 hours times 13, which equals the $520 weekly benefit. The benefit is paid at 95%. So the 40 hours times $13 is multiplied by 95, giving us $494 in benefits. Worker B earns above the minimum wage. So let's say worker B works 40 hours at $13.50 an hour, which is 40 hours times $13.50, which gives us $540 a week. That benefit is paid at 95%, which gives us the $494 plus 60% of 540 minus 520, which is $494 plus 12, giving us $506. Employer provided PTO and Connecticut paid leave benefits. The employer may require a worker to use sick time or other paid time off while on leave. Effective 1/1/22, Connecticut FMLA is requiring that the employee must be allowed to retain 2 weeks of such paid time off. For example, say an employee has 3 weeks of sick time. 2 weeks or 3 weeks of PTO, let's call it PTO. 2 weeks has to be retained effective 1/1/2022, and that other week, that third week, could be used towards their Connecticut FMLA. If the employer offers a short-term disability policy, the interaction of short-term disability and the Connecticut paid leave benefits depend upon the terms of the short-term disability policy. So I would recommend reviewing that policy to assist in the process of coordinating short-term disability and Connecticut paid leave benefits. If a worker does not receive any employer-provided PTO, the Connecticut paid leave eligible worker will receive the full amount of Connecticut PL benefits for the full period of the leave. If the worker does receive employer-provided PTO that is equal to the worker's regular pay for the full amount of time the worker's out on leave, the worker shall not receive any CTPL benefits for that leave. Jessica? If a worker receives employer-provided PTO that's equal to the worker's regular pay The worker gets the full paid leave benefit, but the benefit will not start until the worker stops receiving employer-provided paid time off. If a worker receives employer-provided PTO that's less than the worker's regular pay, the worker shall receive paid leave benefits beginning when the worker starts the leave. The weekly benefit amount will be reduced to ensure that the total amount of Connecticut paid leave benefits and the employer PTO does not exceed 100% of the worker's regular pay. Tips for workers. It is the worker's responsibility to notify the employer that they plan on taking a Connecticut paid leave and that they're applying for paid leave benefits. They should find out from their employer what is required of them as far as any paid time off or any short-term disability benefits. If there are any rules about the use of such time, and if the employer offers a short-term disability policy, whether the policy states that the worker must exhaust all other employer-provided PTO and CTPL before accessing the short-term disability benefits. Okay, next slide. Implementing Connecticut FMLA. Responsibilities for Connecticut FMLA claims. Again, the worker would notify the employer about a need to take time off from work in a timely fashion. Submit the application and paperwork as necessary while providing the supporting documentation. And in addition, comply with employer attendance and call-in policies. The employer must have established leave policies, including rules about PTA usage. Process leave requests, monitor leave usage, and manage worker return to work. They must also refrain from discriminating and retaliating against the worker for FMLA usage. The Connecticut Paid Leave Authority has no official responsibilities relating to Connecticut FMLA. However, we provide information about FMLA as part of the Connecticut Paid Leave training. The Connecticut Department of Labor provides guidance to workers and employers about Connecticut FMLA, and they also investigate complaints regarding denials and discrimination and/or retaliation. Job protected leave process. The worker notifies the employer they need to take time off from work 30 days in advance if need for leave is foreseeable. If it is an emergency, as some cases may be, as soon as practicable, if the leave is not foreseeable. The employer determines if the worker is eligible for Connecticut FMLA and notifies the worker if they need to provide any additional documentation. The employer has 5 business days to notify the worker of eligibility and provide a notice of rights and responsibilities. This is not the leave approval. Next slide, please. The worker provides required documentation, MedCert adoption documents, and the worker has 15 calendar days to provide this documentation. If the worker notifies the employer that they're having difficulty obtaining some of these documents, the employer should give the worker a bit more time. The employer notifies the worker if the leave is approved under Connecticut Family Medical Leave. The employer has 5 business days once it has received the required documentation supporting the leave request. Employer must also notify the worker if they're required to use paid leave accruals and how and when the worker needs to report in, and if they will need to provide a fitness for duty before returning to work. The worker reports to employer when the worker actually takes leave. The employer tracks the leave usage to ensure the worker doesn't exceed the 12 weeks. The employer returns the worker to the same job the worker held before the leave. The worker has the right to return to the same job with the same terms and conditions. Employer cannot insist that the employee be 100% fit for duty or totally recovered. The employer must consider ADA and CFEPA obligations. Complicating factors for managing CTFMLA. Managing workers' absences. Enforcing attendance and call-in policies and getting timely notices from workers or supervisors about a worker's absence. Incomplete or insufficient medical certifications. Workers who need to take intermittent leave, as you need to manage unforeseen absences. Workers who work fluctuating work weeks and the need to calculate average work weeks. Managing the interaction between CTFMLA, federal FMLA, and other laws. Workers who don't want leave to be designated as FMLA. In all circumstances, it is the employer's right and responsibility to designate time off that qualifies under FMLA as FMLA leave, even if the worker does not ask for it. Overview of leave laws. There are a multitude of laws providing job-protected leave. Federal Family Medical Leave, Connecticut FMLA, which is going to change effective 1/1/2022, Workers' Compensation, Americans with Disabilities Act, Pregnancy Disability Act, Connecticut Fair Employment Practice Act, Connecticut Paid Leave Act, which is effective 1/1/22, as to income replacement, and workers' comp, as I had mentioned, for covered on-the-job injuries and illnesses.
Thanks, Kathy. So we wanted to also make you aware of some additional resources where you can get more information. So we have quite a number of different resources that are able to be found on our website. We have an employer toolkit. We also have a human resources toolkit, which can help with the process of the paid leave applications and FMLA. We have employee rack cards, an employee rights poster, fact sheets. So a ton of information that you can find and download. And if you have questions, we would love to have you reach out to us. We do not have a call center, just because it can be upwards of several $1 million a year to operate a call center. But we do have a contact us portal. We have about 15 folks who answer the questions that are sent in through the contact us portal. And if you would prefer to speak to someone instead of to go back and forth via email, you can indicate that on your contact us submission, and someone will give you a call back within 2 business days. We also have probably, I would say, a couple hundred frequently asked questions on our website. So that's also a great resource. And on our YouTube page, we have many helpful videos as well as tutorials, frequently asked question videos, and the like. So we thank you so much for your time and attention. We know that this is a new law. We gave you a lot of information, and we are here to help make the implementation process as smooth as possible. So with that, we would be happy to answer any questions that may not have been addressed in the presentation.
Yes, this is Erin. There's one question that just came in that I think might be helpful for me to answer live because it's a little bit complicated.
Great,
The
thank
question, sorry, put myself on video. Hi, everyone. I'm the General Counsel for the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority. Question came in about basically individuals who live in other states and work from home where the headquarters are in Connecticut. And they're trying to, this particular question is trying to figure out if those workers are covered by Connecticut FMLA or Connecticut Paid Leave. The simplest way to think about this is, where do you pay unemployment compensation for unemployment insurance compensation for those employees? If you pay unemployment insurance compensation for those employees in Connecticut, then they're considered to be Connecticut employees, and they would also have to contribute toward Connecticut Paid Leave. If you're not sure, or you're paying in multiple states, you should only be paying in one state. And basically the guidance relates to where is their locus of control. There's a 4-step process for considering where their locus of control is, and that is on our website. But basically, think about how frequently they come to the state, where their manager is, and kind of where their operations are. If they're only coming to Connecticut on an occasional basis, it's most likely that they're not going to be considered to be working in Connecticut. But again, you really need to consider where you're paying your unemployment insurance.
Thank you, Erin. I believe we have answered all the questions that came into the chat and the Q&A. So as I mentioned, the recording the link will be sent out to you once the recording is ready. And Amber, will we send the deck out as well? I know somebody asked that question.
Yes, everyone will get a copy of the presentation deck.
Great. So that'll be coming within the next couple of days. Again, thank you so much for your time and attention, and we are here to help. So please do reach out if you think of any other questions after. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.